The topic is optimism in Eastern philosophy. And Eastern philosophy that I studied and could cover is Buddhism, Confucianism, and Daoism. And essentially, if you actually took any class on them, you may do like, because they're actually more or less realism versus optimistic. So I'll get to the point why I am saying there's optimism in Eastern philosophy at the end. Okay, cool. All right, so next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So we all love the definition, right? So what's optimism? And I usually check the English dictionary. So it says something about hopefulness and confidence about the future or the successful outcome of something. And then next is like a doctrine, especially as set forth by Leibniz, that this world is the best of all possible worlds. I'm not going to go into that either. Those are very loaded ones. But this is why we have the whole kind of the term optimism famous in the Western world. And then Voltaire kind of uses after him. That kind of became more popular. But that's a Western philosophy class. This one is more or less how we use it when we say optimism. First one, right? There's something hopefulness, and then somehow you have a confidence. It's not or. Hopefulness and confidence together. How do you have that? For future. How do you have that? That's the question actually I am kind of lifting up. And also that's the question hopefully we can find an answer in Eastern philosophy, especially Buddha and Confucius. Next slide, please. So the word optimism is from Latin word optimum, meaning very simply best thing. And then psychology, right? Modern psychology defines optimism like this. So it's an attitude now, right? So hope again. So when you feel optimistic, you feel, like positive things will happen and that things can change for better. When you're not feeling like that, how are you going to become optimistic? That's a big question, isn't it? Yeah, Richie was actually sharing last night that his congregation is very against optimism. And believe it or not, if you ever talk to like very caring, intelligent people, somewhere around age 33 to 45-ish, they're all not optimistic at all. So there's something about that. And then probably you can say they're realistic. I would not say they're pessimistic. Next slide, please. So that's the pessimism. From Latin word again, pessimus meaning worst. So there's the best and there's the worst. I believe we're kind of always living in the middle somewhere. And now, if you kind of quote Swedenborg, it's kind of interesting that sometimes we want to see ourselves being in heaven or related to heaven. Is that what we really want to claim or what we have to claim? What Swedenborg's kind of suggesting is that actually what is going on with us is that either we are turning to heaven or turning to hell. We may not have moved a single bit. But the direction that we are facing matters, because that's where we receive this inner energy. So if we're facing toward heaven, the influences from heaven and angels are welcome. And we have back to hell, so that from hell is lessened. But when we turn the other way around, we're welcoming the influences from hell more. Then what happens? We move toward the way that we welcome more. So his point about our kind of spiritual growth is, which way are you facing? That's the most important thing. Even if you are highly cultivated, but somehow you turn around and facing hell, you are moving toward that direction, that moment. So again, optimism, pessimism, optimistic, pessimistic. Is it so important about being there, or which way you are facing and moving toward? So just have that in your mind. Next slide, please. Here we go. Now we go into Buddha and Confucius. I put some Chinese characters because those are the ones that I learned and I studied. And I kind of put the red mark on that. That's mind. So, of course, Buddha taught a lot and Confucius taught a lot. But to tell the truth, just like about Jesus, we don't know when he was born. Arguably, we don't really know where he was born. We have story, but real historically, we actually don't know. We also don't know what he actually taught. We only know what his disciples remembered as he taught. It's exactly same with these two figures. None of them wrote a book. They didn't have recordings. I mean, I'm recorded right now, so 30 years, 40 years later, people can say, come back to me and say, yeah, you actually said this. I can't deny it because my image in the video is speaking about it, right? But Buddha, Confucius, they didn't write a book. They didn't have any of this modern technology of recording what they were saying. It was basically remembered by their disciples. And then after their passing, they gathered together and they, from their own memory, they rewrote. So everything is the work of mind. That's kind of one key teaching from Buddha. Here, everything means everything. The desk the chair you're sitting on, the clothes that you're wearing, you're thinking who you are, the things that you think it's valuable, the things that you think it makes you happy. It's all creation of your own mind. That's kind of Buddha. Confucius, we'll get to this later. So this is kind of his way of thinking, the most cultivated way of being and living. So we could say, even if I follow the desires of my own mind freely, yet it does not cross the line of common sense. Meaning, I do whatever I like to do, but it all falls into the right way. So my mind has been transformed fully. So the key word, mind. So the focus of today's optimism in this two ancient philosophers is that I'm going to now put this one very important, I guess this is my own conclusion, is that one, optimism in humanity is possible because human mind is cultivatable. Meaning, you can be changed and improved by yourself. By yourself. That's kind of like first one. And that's why there's optimism. So that's one. Next slide, please. So let's look at Buddha. I mean, we all know, right? It's very famous. So I'll just go very briefly. So he's born as prince, right? Grow up without lacking nothing. Supposedly, his mother has this great dream, in conception of him. And then the sage gave them, the king and the queen, interpretation that your child will either become the greatest king ever or the greatest sage that saves humanity. King and queen, especially king, didn't like the second idea. So he built a new palace and put everything beautiful, all the flowers, and then surrounded this little boy with all the beauty youth in the world that he can find. And as he grows up, he even built the palaces, all the beautiful women he could find in the country. So he grew up in the way that most insulated and most, what's the word, spoiled, you can ever imagine. He has never seen a single sickness, single person dying, or even old person, something that withers. So, but he had this famous outings, right? As he was older. So he saw old man and was saying, what's that? He never seen an old man. So his, story varies. So the one who's escorting him said, that's an old man. What's an old man? Dear prince, we all get age. Really? We become like that? And next outing, he met a sick person. What's his trouble? Dear prince, he's sick. What's sickness? Oh, dear friends, we all get sick and it pains. Really? There's sickness? And then the last one, he saw a funeral. This one was major, right? What's that? Dear prince, that's funeral. What's funeral? Dear prince, we all die. So that's the honoring the dead. We died? Really? So I'll get aged, I'll get sick, and I'll die. Wait, then what's my life here? So he decided to leave his palace. And he went into very ascetic practices following ancient Hinduistic way. He was very successful, he even had a following. But then he realized, again, there are a couple of versions of stories about this too. Of course, this is ancient story, right? Buddha did not have his own personal journal of what happened. So yes, there's no point of arguing which one's correct one. I'm just letting you know. The one that I keep to myself is that after very severe, serious fasting ascetic practices, he was at the blink of death. He felt that he's dying. And if he continued this way, he'll die for sure. Then he realized, wait a second, if I die now, I'm not enlightened yet. I'll need to come back here again, do it all over again. Then if I don't obtain enlightenment at that time, then I'll have to come back here again, restart all over again. What's the point here? So that was his first enlightenment. So he gave up all these ascetic practices. He cleansed himself, he fed himself, and he rested well. So that's why the Buddha statues, most of them he is buried, right? Nice size. It's not like really skinny fit like that modern culture promote. It's more, yeah, that's why. Of course, his disciples left him because they were disappointed. Because their master betrayed them. But he himself realized that everything is creation of my mind. So he focused on meditation and he was enlightened. I mean, there are many stories in this and that. I'm just skipping all that. There are many books about it. So that's kind of very fast forward brief of Buddha's life. So for any questions?
We do have a comment in the chat.
Yes.
Will Linden says, an optimist thinks this is the best of all possible worlds. A pessimist is afraid he's right.
Good comment. Thank you. I like that. Sure. Yep. Okay, then we can move on to the next slide. So the very famous Four Noble Truths. Well, I can do an entire mini course just based on this, or actually one of these four. So yeah, there's no way that I'll dive into all this very deeply. So again, I'll just touch the very head point. Okay. Buddha, this word is used a lot and sometimes misused a lot. So when Buddha was acknowledging that life is suffering, it doesn't mean pessimistic. It's actually more realistic. And also suffering has degrees of suffering. Like, have you ever bought a child an ice cream? Have you?
Yes.
Good. Did you have an accident that accidentally the top part just slid and then fell down to the ground, and the child's reaction after that is? That's a suffering too. That's a suffering for a child. But then when you put 2 more scoops on top of it, what happens? Happy again. Okay, so suffering, joy, all this impermanent, temporary. So more we build our attachment bond to something that is not permanent, we will get into inevitably the gap where there is void and vanity. That gives you pain because you are yearning for something that you will not have. You are hungry for something that does not exist anymore. My personal example, I love my growing daughter, but when she turned 12, I realized my little girl's gone. I mean, dad, all right? All the dad will know this feeling. The one who was on my lap and living on top of me, this innocent, pure little thing. I mean, it's turning into a little lady, so I'm celebrating that. But at the same time, there is this, my own very selfish desire that I want to keep her that way. Or I want to experience that more, but it doesn't exist. So more I desire for it, more what happens to me? Pain, exactly, pain. I have the pain. Now, the worst case will be that I want to make my daughter to stay that way because that's what I want. That will be a disaster for the family. But human beings have this tendency to make, ask, expect others to fulfill their desire. Yet all this is, according to Buddha, illusion. So we need to seize them. That's what. So arising or cause of suffering related to craving. And these are like ancient Sanskrit. So translating them into English, of course, you probably all agree, it's kind of crazy, right? I mean, certain things I perceive it, but I can't really put into the word. And I know this pain because I'm translating true Christian religion into Korean. So it's crystal clear in my brain, but because I studied all in English and studied Latin, like there's no word for this in Korea. What am I going to do with this? But I cannot write a sentence for a single word, right? It doesn't work like that. So there are much deeper meaning kind of embedded into each of these truths. But very simply, we have suffering, or we feel suffering because it is rising from our craving. We crave, but why is it suffering? Because we crave something that does not exist, or does not exist anymore, or does not stay the way we like it. Like another example, you visited a restaurant, you love the food, the feeling. You're going to go back there again, it's not the same. And what do you feel?
Disappointment.
And that causes suffering. There you go. So everything in this temporary world is like that. And that's, again, that's not me, that's Buddha. That's Buddha's teaching. So there's a way to seize it, cessation. And then cessation happens through the path, the Eightfold Path. And next page, please. So this one is very hard, especially this word that it says right, because right, I'm saying right. Right, what do I mean by that? Do you agree with me, right? But if we all agree, is that the right way? No, it's not. There is the way actually that makes your mentality, mind, to be healthy, to work toward seizing this craving. That's what it means by right. It is not in the sense of what we say is right and wrong, or in the value sense of what is more valuable, less valuable, or in the sense of even like you agree with me in agreement of right and wrong. It is right view, right resolve, right speech, right conduct, behavior, livelihood, effort, mindfulness. Here's mindfulness. And samadhi, that's the one like can't really translate into English. So we just put it on. That's a state of being in meditation where you are somewhat, your self-ego is somewhat in sleep, so you can make connection with higher reality. So there's a peace and there's a unity. And you can't really describe it in words.
Is it like something that you learn to accept
Sure. Yeah.
and be okay with?
That's the way we go. That's the way we go. That's the way we go. Yes. Because there are a lot of things we need to accept, right? Against the way that I don't want to accept, against the way that I want to judge them, against the way that I want to criticize them. And we all have, I mean, I don't see any child here, so we all have very well-working system of value, right? You know what's valuable, what's not, what's right, what's wrong, but you need to make that decision every single day. But which one is the one that actually helps you to seize the craving?
What word? The what?
Seize the
Seize.
craving.
Seize the craving.
Seize the craving. Thank you.
Yes. So that involves seeing, view is seeing right. Because, you know, even Bible says, even because you're seeing, you have eyes doesn't mean you can see it. You have ears, that doesn't mean you can hear. Why did God say that way? Our seeing is materialistically fixated. We see this reality only. But we are enabled to see something that's higher. Are you willing to practice that? I can guarantee you it causes you pain. Because you got to give up a lot. Every single one of them. There is a detachment or letting go of something that we want to cultivate higher. We cannot just like enjoy all this and have fun and then all that come down to us. That's not how it works. Anyway, that's what Buddha says.
We do have a comment in the chat from an Eric Hoffman,
Yes.
and he says, we might translate right as the option that is inspired, that flows from the divine into our interiors, versus the option that is crafted and invented from the imperfect self. Just a thought.
Cool. Thank you, Eric. I like it. See, we need to write a sentence for one word. That's how it is. But in ancient word, when they say it, they knew exactly what it was. That's the barrier that we have. All right. So gotta move on. Okay. So Buddha's way of cultivation. I mean, I believe some of you know these words, right? So the focus is what? Tranquility. Now, tranquility where? In your mind. So, simple question. Today, right now, is your mind calm and peaceful and nothing bothers you?
It's fleeting.
And what he's saying is that that's what you need. That's not the end, actually, that's the beginning. You have to have that in order to cultivate 8 right paths. Because when mind is not calm and clear and cool, we see things very colored way. Prejudices, assumptions, presumptions, we all have them, right? I'm saying again, right? I should stop saying right. So yeah. But when things are all calm, then we can see ourselves even in an objective way. Then the real cultivation begins. That's tranquility. And then next one says, seeing things as they really are. Have you ever done that? Yeah.
It's easier to see things. If you're looking at someone else's relationship, that they're having some sort of difficulty between 2 people and you're not in it at all, you have no connection to the issue, it's much easier to see.
Yeah, but when you're in the
But if
middle
you're
of
in it, no.
exactly. So what Buddha's saying is that even if you're still in it, if you can have the tranquility in your mind, you may be able to see things as they are, as they really are. Well, if you could do it, you can see that it's very helpful, actually. It is. I mean, this is one of my living principles, and it's helping me to have a better relationship with my wife, my son, my daughter, and church members. Seeing as they are, without free from my own subjective attachment, assumptions, you get to see people you really get to see people or actually things, or the nature. You get to actually appreciate all of this. So anyway, that's what Buddha is saying. So we'll need to move on. Next one. All right. So I'm sorry, but I have that's the very, very, very brief summary of what Buddha taught. So something fun. Can you read this? No. Okay, then I'll read it for you. So the title, this is from cartoon way of presenting.
You can read it
You
now.
can read it.
Yeah, all right, from the top though. From Zen Speaks. So I can read it now, right?
No, go ahead and read it.
Okay, I'll read
Yeah,
it.
they want you to read it, but I thought maybe I'd make it bigger, so
All right, I'll read
go
it.
on with you.
So title is The Buddha in the Home. So one day, a young man named Yang Fu left his parents to go to Sichuan to visit the Bodhisattva, Uzi. I'll explain what Bodhisattva is for those who does not know. Where are you going, young man? So that old monk is asking. I'm going to study under Uzi, the Bodhisattva. And the Now here's, instead of looking for mere bodhisattva, you'd better off looking for the Buddha. So bodhisattva is again this term, the state of being that's created by Buddhism, that whenever they see in their mind, he's very close to be enlightened, but they can't put the name title Buddha because Buddha is uno only, right? So they call these things bodhisattva, meaning that these beings are supposedly in Buddhistic legends, they refuse to be enlightened and they vow that they would like to obtain their enlightenment when the last human soul obtain their enlightenment. So they will voluntarily go into the cycle of reincarnation, even though they could get out of it for compassion. That's bodhisattva. So that's why I say, what about, instead of bodhisattva, you look for the Buddha. So young man says, do you know where I can find the Buddha? Like, wow, very catching word. So when you return home, a person wearing a blanket and with the shoes on the wrong feet will come to greet you. That person is the Buddha. The young man in this cartoon says, really? And then we move up. So see, so Yang Fu hurried back, arriving at his home late at night in her joyful haste to greet her returning son. Yang Fu's mother threw on a blanket and accidentally put her slippers on the wrong feet. Yang Fu took one look at her and was suddenly enlightened. Of course, it's a story. So this summary at that is actually, that's not from original book. That's kind of the point that the cartoonist, Chai Zi-chung, was very famous Taiwanese cartoonist who himself was a Taoist. So who did all this, and that's his kind of suggestion that a wholesome thought from within the mind can help us slough off the shell of our inferior selves and, like the croak of a frog, cause a sudden and profound enlightenment. So again, not gonna go all details about into this, but the reason I present this to you among many stories is that as Buddhism was developed, there was insight that was developed too. And enlightenment is not about leaving what you have, because that's what Buddha did. Old mom and dad, you just leave them home and then you say, I need to be enlightened, so I'm gonna go to mountain. That sounds like very irresponsible. Also causing pain, suffering to others. So there was this developed tradition that maybe it is good to acknowledge human relationship and love and compassion in that. Maybe abandoning all that and moving into the mountain for yourself is not that good. So that's kind of one suggestion from Chinese Zen tradition. And next one, please. Okay, this is one of my favorite ones.
This is good.
All right, so past, present, and future. And San Francisco people may have heard it from me many times. Yeah. So one day while walking through the wilderness, a man happened upon a vicious tiger. So you can see that one, right? He's running away now. He ran, but soon came to edge of a cliff. So he was climbing down a vine. Then he discovered another tiger at the bottom. Right? So, can you move a little bit up, Emily? Thank you. Oh, no, that's,
Sorry, it wasn't like.
no worries, no worries. Just take your time. A little bit lower. There you go. So there's a tiger on top, tiger at the bottom. Then two rats appeared, not just one, two, began to gnawing on the vine. Look at that. So they're ripping it and then, oh no. So he's about to die now, right? And at that very moment, suddenly he noticed a plum red strawberry. Right there. So he plucked it and popped it in his mouth. And he's saying, it's delicious. That's life. That is one portrait of life from Zen Buddhism. Again, you can put all kinds of interpretation on the tigers and the vine and the cliff and the rats. But what the essential message is what?
No, there's many distractions.
Many distractions, the fear, rush, haste, anxiety, delight, all response of your own mind. You're responding to what is happening around you. You may not respond at all. Then you may have your calmness, but you feel like you're designed to respond to them. But what responses you create, there's a bigger mess kind of running within your mind. And sometimes we call that, as in modern days, stress. Okay, so I need to end Buddha now. Any questions? I know it's like only what, but we have time limit. No? Okay. Anybody from online?
Nope, nothing in the chat right now.
Cool. So I guess I was making it very clear. Are you all? You're all smart and very genius. All right, we'll move into Confucius. Okay, so if you see the timeline, if you remember, Buddha and Confucius were kind of born, lived a similar timeline, but give or take a couple of hundred years. So the truth is, we don't know exactly when these people are actually born and what they actually did. It's kind of questionable because things are written after they passed away. But however, Confucius is probably among all these very big teachers, most historical figure, because he actually wrote a book, not about his philosophy, but about the history of his little tiny country. Yeah, that's the only book so far we know that he actually wrote. Unlike Buddha, he was born of common class. His father was probably just a soldier back in the day. He dedicated for study of classics. Confucius's childhood was somewhat problematic, troublesome. Some record suggests that he was actually a very tall, big man, because his father was the general soldier. So problem is that, however, despite his wisdom and learning, no king would hire him. Problem is, he was actually feared by all the subjects because he was too smart. So all of them feared that if Confucius is hired, king will favor him too much, that empower all the, him with all the power in the kingdom, the subject will lose their power. So they did this, background talk, and Confucius was never actually hired. So he journeyed basically through many kingdoms, and there's that. But afterward, he settled and he started to teach. And it's actually his disciples who made Confucius very famous, because among his disciples were like very famous people in history. So Confucius' focus is actually cultivation, which is actually achieved by education. So, Confucius, according to his disciples, said many things, but he focuses always on education. So what was that? Yeah, so if you want to prepare for 1 year, you invest in like a trading. But if you want to invest in 10 years, you buy a land and cultivate. But if you want to invest for the 100 years, you build schools and educate your children. That's from him. So he really focused on education and transformation, progressive growth of mind by means of education. That was his thing. So either we actually know or not, but all Asian culture, I can't say that, but most of Asian culture influenced by this mentality or this principle, the entire education, and also the relationship between teacher, student, master, disciple. That's all actually Confucius's influence. Okay, next one, please. So this is something famous thing that Confucius talked about, and this one that is the one that we kind of saw. So you can say this in a number of different ways, but the way I could see is that this is progress of inner nature that could happen by your age. Doesn't mean it has to happen by your age. But that's his own reflection, that when he was kind of, after, of course, 70, that he said to his disciples, at age 30, the word itself is to stand by oneself, meaning that he has his own ideas. He, like in modern term of like, he has a PhD, something like that. So he has his own ideas. It's concrete. He knows where to go, what to do now. So at 30, he got clear on that. At 40, he was kind of unshaken by delusions. But this word here could mean delusions, but also other temptations, other attractions, many other things that would shake you, right? So you want to go on this path, and there are all other things that like distract you. That all includes. But at 40, he felt that he has this firm ground now, that he is not anymore shaken by those things. At age 50, he said actually he understood the mandate of heaven. Swedenborg was 56, right? Close. So this word stands for to know, and this is the heaven, and this is actually mandate. So, but also this word means like purpose. So the mandate of heaven is your purpose. He acknowledged why I'm here and what I should do with my talent and my life on earth. So for him, that was education. At age 60, to have ears become smooth. Interesting, isn't it? That's word for ear. This one means smooth, gentle. So what does that mean that your ear became smooth and gentle? Well, I can tell you this, the other reference from Confucius. Good medicine is bitter for your tongue, but good for your body. Good advice is bitter to your ear, but good for your life. Bitter to your ear. Ear becomes smooth, then it's not bitter anymore. So he became perceptible, acceptable to all. Another famous thing that he talks about is that at age 70, you can still learn something from 7 years old. If there are 3 human beings, there should be at least one who can be your teacher or who can teach you something. So he kept his humility despite his intelligence and his actually high status at the time, that he was very humble as far as the seeking the learning goes. He It was always willing to learn. That's amazing thing about Confucius. And this one, I didn't put the age, but it's kind of 70 and up. That's the one. He says, like, even if I follow my own desire from my own heart, nothing was going over the common sense. So you know, that's why I said that. So I was able to do whatever I like to do, but kind of combining with the Daoism is that I was living with the Tao. That's what he's trying to say. All right. Shall we move? Okay, now this. Okay. This is the process that Confucius was suggesting about how our cultivation goes. And do you remember that the Buddha was suggesting that tranquility and also being able to see things as they really are, right? First one, to observe things as they are. As they are. That's how it has to begin. You see things as they are. What about, I can't do that? Well, then you have to wait. Next one cannot begin unless you achieve this one. That's how this ancient philosophy and philosophers actually suggest. Because they're not talking about learning here. They're talking about transforming ourselves. It is about transformation of our mentality, our mind. So first thing we need to achieve is to be able to see things as they are. That's a task. Then just see it without thinking like you know, what happens to us? Like whenever we see something, like we almost automatically have what? Opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have opinions. What that is, how we can use it, that's good or bad. Like, I mean, I held a plastic cup once to my daughter and she was saying like, Dad, how could you use a plastic cup? It's like get this and that and this and that. Daughter, I was just thirsty. There's nothing else. I'm sorry. But we have that. Confucius is saying, put them all down. Them all down and see things as they are. Then you will gain understanding. Actually, understanding about them, understanding of them, understanding from them. This is almost similar in actual scientific principles too, actually. Later adopted into the scientific methodology. It is very similar. So only from the understanding that you gained from your objective observation, now you make your thoughts. That's, you know, we need to make our thoughts, our mentality based on these truths, objective truths that we have gained. And with that, we make our mind, again, say straight, right? It comes again, because this word means standing for many things, but right, straight, something that is not broken, not rigid. You know, that's this word, and that's mine. So we form our mind with that. That after that we can cultivate ourselves. Like we says, this literally means wash your body. Yeah, literally means wash body. Well, we all know that it doesn't mean that, right? We can wash our body way before this. Right? So that means what? Cultivate our mind. With that right mind, Buddha talks about 8 right ways, right? So Confucius says we need to form the right kind of mentality in order to cultivate ourselves. After that, it means actually literally manage the house. So meaning actually you can, you know, yeah, household, but actually a small area around you, you could probably put good influence on that.
Of your community?
Your community, your church, you know, small area around that is connected. But again, that's after you cultivate yourself, not before. So when that is all aligned with this right mentality, then you can govern the country. You can influence your country. And after that, you can bring peace to the world. That's how kind of he was laying out. Cool? Any questions?
Nothing in the chat here.
How about here? So far, so good?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so a few quotes from Confucius. I had the cartoon version of Confucius, but somebody loaned it from me and I lost the track, so I don't have it, sorry. So yeah, it's not you, Jenny. So the famous book called Analects, that's actually in the literal Chinese word, what that is actually, this is words of discussion. That's what literal means. So that's in that what happens is that like Confucius is actually having discussion with his disciples. That's what's written here. Like they ask questions, or he started teaching and then they ask questions. And then the collection of that is, so there are 4 books and 3 scriptures in Confucian or ancient Asian classics, Chinese classics. And this is one of them. Isn't it delightful to study and learn? That's the first thing. It talks about joy of learning. Joy of learning. Now, this one connects Swedenborg quite far because first thing we need to have in our regeneration process. You're all Swedenborgians, right? What is that? It's a tricky question. Affection of truth. Literally meaning joy of learning what is true. That's affection of truth. So that's what's necessary. And isn't it delightful when a friend visits? Community, companionship. Right? Have a friend and visit, there's a cheer, joy, delight. That's joyful. And this one is challenging. Even if people do not recognize you, yet you are not upset. Aren't you a gentleman? That's a traditional translation. True man, I don't know, that's another word that's very hard to translate into English. The British people translate it into gentleman, and I kind of disagree. I know what gentleman is in the British history. That's not what Confucius is really saying. This word, you know, the true person, maybe this concept, this person is like close to be when Jesus is saying that I am humble and gentle in heart. That's why. So, you know, like you do many things, you do services, and then, well, we are humans, so like we want to be recognized, or we like to be recognized. But see, kind of Confucius is saying that, however, if people do not recognize that, there's no upsetness in your mind. You are really truly cultivated. And I tell you, that's not easy. That's not easy.
So it's a desire. So if you're a true gentle soul, wise soul, then you do not seek recognition. Is that what you're
No.
saying?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Would the word ecumenity describe the peace of spirit?
Sure. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. All right, so another one from Confucius's teaching. Birch is not alone because there should be a neighbor there. This is like, if you really go into deeper side of it, this is almost Swedenborg's principle of God is good and love. Because you're virtuous, but you don't find anyone in your community, maybe you're anyone is virtuous. You're talking also think about time of Confucius. But he felt that there is neighbor. There is somebody, some being, some presence that is actually affirming virtue. So he has, I believe, deep insight there too. And now this word, there are two key words in entire Confucius's teaching that if you were to summarize, one is this one. It's translated usually benevolence. The other one is this one, that's translated virtue. So next slide, please. So this word benevolence is actually a combination of word that means human and the word means two. So two humans. If there are two humans, is it always benevolence? No, then what does that mean? Benevolence happens between humans. You cannot be benevolent by yourself. Just like the definition of love. Yes.
If you put those two symbols together, human and two,
Yeah, that's this.
but they're exactly the same symbols that you had for heaven before.
Heaven is different one. Let me write it. Heaven is this one.
Let's see very well.
that's okay.
Marker is right.
Marker is not, okay.
Use a better
That's it.
marker. Try a
All right,
different
yeah, sure. Okay,
marker.
not my classroom.
There's no, I'll tell you, in college classrooms, there's never good markers.
Is it better? Okay. That's the word for heaven.
How's that different from those human and two?
Oh, you're saying that this looks like two and this is that.
Yes.
It's different because that's not how it's combined. It looks similar, but the way how the word heaven comes is different way than this characters. But I get your point. Yes, yeah, thank you.
I'll leave it alone, thank you.
So, but that's what exactly divine love and wisdom that basically Swedenborg's kind of nailing is saying that that's the purpose, the reason of creation. Love to be loved, it has to have the other, somebody else than itself to be in relationship with love. Confucius is saying exactly the same thing about this word. So this could be just translated as love actually in Swedenborgian term. I just put it this way because this is the famous translation of it. And this only is possible between more than oneself. You cannot have a love relationship all by yourself. I mean, some people claim it, so this world is interesting. But benevolence cannot happen by yourself. You have to do it with somebody else. And the word virtue has combination of three. So this one, first one means walk a little, next one means straight and mind. So if you combine them together, what do you have? You walk a little straight with your mind. That's virtue. So again, you see the cultivation toward the right direction with your mind. That's the virtue. So later, like we interpret and explain virtue in very this metaphysical way of like this and this and that, but ancient people had very practical mind. Virtue is, yeah, something that you actually walk with your mind little by little every day. If you don't do it every day, it doesn't happen. Like how many times you need to water your plant?
Daily. Daily.
If you ever, had a garden or actually, tended your flowers, unless it rains.
It depends on the weather. Right?
Exactly.
Depends on the.
You have to work with the nature. So that's exactly how also the other side of, I need to stop. Yeah, I could go on and on with that. So the last one now, however, is that then what's the challenge, at the Confucius see is self. That's very interesting, actually. You overcome self to return to the propriety. This is another one that's very hard to translate. I checked all English translations words. If you combine all of them, it's close to half of what it means. Because this word like literally dominated entire Chinese history for at least 1500 years. That's why Asian people are doing this. That's this word. So in a sentence, this is the most proper way of behaving as a human being. That's this word.
I love the fact that in that tradition, it's always this to honor other people.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah, and then the reason, the same thing, right? This means like I have two hands here, right here. I'm putting here, so I'm not gonna attack you, right? And in Asian ways, put here, you show your empty hands right here. You give your head to the other. That's even more direct, actually. I'm at your mercy. You can kill me. But I show you this. So that's this. But we need to overcome self to be so. Now here's the key point. He didn't say you overcome yourself to reach this. You return to this. Return means what?
You were there before.
Well, you started there,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So that's optimistic. Does it make sense?
Yes.
That's Confucius's optimism. That either you started there, you have done it before, so it's possible. You just need to return there. Versus like it's something that never done before. It's far in the galaxy. Only like one person has ever done it. I mean, I was quite amazed like that when I was very young. That wow, I can actually do that. And then Kevin.
Is it a sense? I mean, it's only Swedenborgian of me, but the idea of return also to innocence, of you're returning from your prideful self to your childhood self that took instruction and obedience from your parents.
Yeah, similar. That's why they remember that the last stage is that like children. I've seen the books very the innocence of ignorance and innocence of wisdom. That's exactly what that is in a way. Yeah. So children do whatever they like to do, right? But they destroy everything around them and they're very selfish. I mean, it's true. I raised two and I was a child too. But as you mature and you have innocence of wisdom, you do whatever you like to do, but you inspire people, you nurture people. Why? Because that's your love. That's what delights you. That's what Confucius kind of saying. But again, you return to it. It is not a goal that's far out, that's impossible to reach but himself. But he's saying, you guys can all do this. Actually, you're returning to it. Just overcome yourself.
I'm kind of thinking, what you said about like people today, they have to love themselves because they're, selfish in a way. But you do have to love yourself.
Yes.
So if you love yourself and you understand what love is, And then when you're with someone else, whether it be a husband, a friend, or all of us, you have to love them as well.
Yes.
And then that love for yourself gets even better because that whole relationship is even better and it's more
Yes.
fuller, it's fuller.
So if
And
I
then-
may,
Yeah,
put
go ahead.
Confucius and Buddha's context in that, love yourself in the right way.
Exactly.
Because there are so many ways to love myself in a wrong way. That's destructive. I have counseled over 500 couples. I have seen it all in a way. There are so many things that we talk as love, but it's not really right way of love. I mean, so many times that I have witnesses that I love you, so I'm gonna punch you. I'm like, that's not love. It hurts me. Kevin?
Well, and a lot of time, our concept of love is based on exactly what Confucius, Swedenborg, and Buddha are speaking against, which is actually confusing ourselves with the stuff of the world. So we say, oh, loving myself is surrounding myself with the stuff that isn't real.
Yes.
And then you fail to actually love yourself. And that's, I think, something I more struggle with than people punching me.
What I was gonna finish
Yes.
is, you have this relationship with others and that's like a more fuller relationship. But then periodically you check back with yourself.
Mhm.
You make sure that what you're feeling is right, it's sound, it's a good thing. And then, so you're clear about that. And so essentially you're loving the right way yourself.
Sure.
And then you return to those other people and then you're a better you and that relationship.
And then the other person does the same thing, then benevolence, love happens.
Right.
It has to be more than you. Oh,
First of all, I love this. I think this is really enlightening. I appreciate it, especially love the language and the kanji. But I noticed with all the bullets points, the word mind
yes,
is kind of all encompassing for
Yes.
the whole person, where I do not see the word heart, for
Uh-huh.
example.
yes,
And when you read Proverbs, for example, the mind usually is referred to with your words, the
Uh-huh.
lips, the things
Yes.
you speak.
yes.
And the heart usually refers to your intention.
Uh-huh.
But here, the mind is supposed to be all
Yes.
encompassing.
Yes.
Heart, intention, everything.
Yes.
I'm reminded of that particular proverb that says, my child, if your heart is wise, my own heart will also be glad. And my innermost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. So there's that word again.
Cool.
It's basically marrying your mind or your brain with your heart. And if you have a good merge on that, then you're gonna be a good person and you're gonna have, better relationships.
So I hear you, and actually mind the heart. If you want to talk about it, we need another hour. I can guarantee that. There's a reason why I can just, have one sentence. There's a reason why Eastern philosophy do not mention about heart, and they talk about mind. One reason that I know is because that's how and where we process everything.
Say that again.
That's where and how we process everything in the mind. And that's what we can be really conscious of. That's where we can change things. You can't change your heart, but you can't actually see it. Swedenborg says the same thing. You can't see your intentions. Later, you can backtrack and say, oh, that was my intention. But usually when we're engaged, it's our thoughts. That's present, that's conscious. That's why in Eastern philosophy, it's all mind. But there's heart too, and that's another problem. So let's table that, please.
Yeah, we also, I think we use heart as a metaphor, and the heart is encompassed in the concept of mind. You
True.
need the metaphor. It's just a different way of looking.
That's what I'm saying. You don't take an next an hour, 15 minutes to clarify
So
what.
next year?
Sure. I can do that. I can do that.
I
Heart
just
and
want-
mind and its symbolism in East and West, right?
I just wanted to say one thing. It just reminds me of, I've been a nurse for 48 years and I'm still practicing, but I used to, go on rounds with the residents, and there was this neurologist who would go on rounds all the time, and he would constantly compare the nurse and the heart. And I mean, the
Mind
head or the brain and the head in the heart. And he would basically say that heart, it beats all the time, but it's just stupid. It has its own intrinsic beat.
Yeah.
But the brain, that is the most intelligent part of the person. It's not heart, because that stupid thing will just beat them out of it. And he said that to every group of residents that came in, because he was like really into that, your mind is the most important thing and your brain is the most important matter. So I guess it's the same kind of thing.
Thank you.
I agree.
Clark?
Quickly, Confucius said, in order to understand things, we must first name them. But naming is not a simple matter.
That's most confusing one.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things in the chat, and we are running close on time.
Yeah.
So Carol LeBaron says, this mini course is fantastic, just what I needed right now. And then Lon Elmer says, mind or ego has the job to run the factory, but when it thinks it owns the factory, then we have suffering.
Okay.
Like that.
Sounds like a good
That was
comment.
Lon
Thank you.
Elmer. that one.
Thank you, Lon.
That was great.
I did want to say one thing, when you talked about the word straight or right, one of the things that I was remembering was from the book, The Anatomy of Peace. I don't know if you've ever read that. It talks about justification. When you're seeking to be justified, it means you're crooked. There's something about you, the way your being is crooked, it needs to be straightened. And so that kind of ties right in with that idea of right. Well, right is subjective, but if you're feeling the need to be straightened, then that means there's something that needs to be fixed in you.
Yeah, repaired, cultivated.
Yep, exactly.
So the word that we use cultivation more is, I'm sorry, I'll, one
We
more
have,
minute.
so we don't, the children's program is at 11, just so that you guys know the children's program is at 11. We don't need this room right away, so if,
No, but
like,
I
just
really
wanted
love
let
to
you
finish
know.
it on
Yeah.
time. So just give 1 minute is about, correct question is that, yes. So, and then my opinion about, we love the image of cultivation is like, we need to go back to the ancient time of cultivation. Cultivation in ancient day means you go actually wilderness, a barren land, uncultivated place. You mark the area. First thing is you take out all the big rocks. And then next is, cut down the big trees, take the root out. And so that's the cultivation. That's our mind. So that we need to do that.
In order to become more productive.
And fertile.
After taking them all out, then you start actually turn the,
Soil.
over, and then you take out the small rocks that's hidden underneath, and you do it a few times, finding all of them. Then you put the soil and you wait 1 year, the next year you do that again and see anything is hidden there, then you can plant the seed. That's how I believe that's how cultivation works. So that's exactly, I think, comparable to our mental cultivation. So preparation takes a long time, but when you have it done properly, the fruit is delicious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
Yeah, and then someone, Eric Hoffman, I don't know that I'm gonna pronounce it right, but he says Gamsahabnida.
감사합니다.
Okay.
천만에요. So that's how it's supposed to go.
I have a question.
Yes.
After 16 minutes, and Confucius here using this necessary thought, trying to find it. Is that an intention based on
There's a little bit of intention here. I don't want to mention.
I just thought that was interesting that the.
This guy noticed everything.
He doesn't miss anything. He used italics for Buddhism, but sans serif Chinese font for. Which you only understand if you understand the difference between italic Chinese writing and a non-italic Chinese writing. And I just was wondering if that was intentional. And it was.
I'm gonna say everything with Junchol is intentional.
I just thought, I was, oh.
Okay, there's
Different impression, you get different impression.
And the two are different spirits.
Exactly, you did it.
And it stood out to me because, wow, how appropriate it was. I mean, yeah, choice.
Hey, Lon.
You're welcome.
I thought that was hilarious. I don't know how many other people.
Those of you on Zoom, I'm gonna end the meeting. So thank you for joining us. See you, our next mini course is, I believe, the next one in this room, so perhaps I'll see you then.
Yeah.